Hello, everyone. This is Reganne and Cory from the Wodify team. We are back with another episode of the Wodify Insider series. If you missed our first conversation, this is a new series from the Wodify team, and it's all about connecting you with some of the brightest minds in the fitness industry to help you grow, adapt, and thrive in the industry as a business owner.
Yeah, and today we're really excited to bring you a conversation that we recorded with John Singleton, who is the founder of the Progrm. If you're into the competitive side of the CrossFit space, and you likely have heard of John in the Progrm, he has coached some of the best athletes in that sport, and him and his team have taken 30 athletes to the CrossFit Games. But today we also touch upon a new topic with John. He's, in addition to his CrossFit experience, he's at the forefront of another emerging trend, which is HYROX.
Yeah, super interesting. And HYROX is really gaining popularity these days and creating a lot of opportunities for gyms and fitness businesses. I know I'm seeing more and more customers starting to add HYROX as a program offering at their gym. And so we wanted to bring John on just to talk more about what HYROX is, how it differs from CrossFit, and most importantly, how gym owners can continue to capitalize on this rising popularity.
Yeah, we hope that this will be a really insightful conversation for any fitness business owners that are listening in. We got into a whole host of different topics with John. We talked about his background and how he got into the fitness space. We talked about the differences between training for CrossFit and HYROX. We also talked more on the business side, where we got into how gyms can start to offer HYROX programming at their facilities. Also, whether or not, I know this is a question I get a lot on calls, if they need to be official HYROX affiliates in order to offer HYROX programming. We talked all about that. And of course, overall, we just tried to sort of explore what this all could mean for business owners and fitness business owners.
Yeah, it can be really hard to keep up with the trends of the fitness industry. So we want to make sure we're bringing these conversations to you all to keep you in the loop. So one more thing before we jump into the conversation. If you are a Wodify customer, the Progrm is on Wodify's workout marketplace. They've built programming specifically for gyms who are looking to introduce HYROX training, which makes it super easy to get started. One thing that I thought was really cool that John talked about with their programming is that they keep in mind equipment and facility limitations when they build out programming for affiliates. So this is a really thoughtful programming. Although they've worked with higher level athletes, it's meant for your gym general public.
Awesome. And without any further ado, let's get into our conversation with founder of the Progrm, John Singleton.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Cory. I'm here on behalf of Wodify, and I'm also joined by fellow Wodify team member Reganne down there. Reganne, wave to the people.
Hello, people.
But we are very pleased to be joined by John Singleton, who is the founder of the Progrm. So welcome, John. Thanks for joining us here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. So, John, before we get into some of the meat and potatoes of the conversation, some of the prepared questions we definitely wanted to hit with you, tell us a little bit about John. Tell us about, how did you navigate your way to the fitness industry? What's sort of the origin story of the Progrm? Just kind of bring us up to how we got here today.
Yeah, I'll try to jump through quite a few years quickly, but I kind of found fitness. I always loved sports, hated like academia at school, fell in love with anything physical when I was there. And martial arts was the first thing that really took my attention and was really my first like passion and something I fell in love with. And I was like all in, I was Chinese martial arts and I loved the philosophy. And I actually ended up moving out to China when I was 18 to go study Shaolin, for those who are aware. So actually, that's my first deep dive into the fitness space. And there's a lot of training involved. There's old school type of training, but that was what was involved. I then came back to the UK, where I'm originally from, and studied osteopathy. So I hold a master's degree in osteopathy, and it was during my time studying osteopathy that I found CrossFit, and that was like 2007. So it was very early doors. Yeah, there was like, one or two affiliates in the UK. And my style of CrossFit was, me and a friend who were studying together, was like, we'd run around a park and do like 21 kettlebell swings and just as hard as we could. And, that was it. there weren't places to train, and the competitions that we did were there. So I have very really fond memories of that. And I think CrossFit was very influential for me because at the time I was studying, also I had this new kind of passion that I found alongside started to divert me away from martial arts and something else. And so it really meant that I could go down a bit of a rabbit hole as I was, had all this time to study. I could look into movements of CrossFit, how it was working. And so I was all in and hooked. And I had athletic aspirations, but it's really hard to describe. The ecosystem was very different back then. Like athletes were kind of coaches. Everyone was a bit of a mix. There wasn't this separation between a coach, an athlete, and managers, and all the big structure it's become now. And over time, I kind of realized, okay, I'm not going to reach the athletic potential that I would like to get to. I made regionals and stuff back in the day, but never made that kind of step to games level. And I always loved the coaching side. And in 2014, I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in on coaching. So I left being a competitive athlete. I still train and enjoyed to train, but that's when moved in. I suppose most notably that year working with Sarah Sigmund's daughter and Björgvin. They both ended up podiuming in 2015, and that was like a big break for us. The program then formed, and since then, we've taken over 30 athletes to the CrossFit Games, and I think the reputation for us has been very built on the elite side of the sport, and that was our focus, very much back in the day. Whereas now our team's expanded a lot, and I'd say that our focus has become a lot more internal in the sense of working with our community, developing athletes, being able to help the gyms and affiliates that we have on board. So we've kind of moved, we kind of have this dual focus now where we have this elite kind of aspect to the program. That's what we tend to put up on socials and all of those fancy things, but actually a lot of our work's done internally to support members that we have on board. So it was longer than I anticipated, but that's a little bit of an intro.
That's a good intro. I'm curious. So
dedicated relationship as the coach as well.
Yeah. How big is the team of the program? I'm assuming it's not just you, obviously, running everything.
No. So we not all full time, but we're a team of 15 now. So
that's awesome.
That goes from coaches to programmers to media to people who help in the back end. And I think that's one of the nicest things from my side is being able to be a part of that team and help lead that team. I've it's put a lot of growth from my side has had to come over in that for the last few years. It's required me to kind of move in a different way and run the business in a different way. Sometimes it's easy when it's just you go, okay, well, I make this decision and it happens and it's done. Whereas now it has to go through certain process. Everyone has to be informed. So that's been a bit of a journey in of itself.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Alongside that, we have also owned and operated gyms. So it's been a busy period, but everything's been very focused in the CrossFit world. Pretty much every waking hour, well over a decade, has just been focused on CrossFit or some CrossFit related activity, which is why probably segueing into what we're speaking about today is then an interesting change as well.
John, I have a little bit of an off-topic question for you, but one that I'm genuinely interested to hear your take on. We deal with a lot of gym owners, a lot of coaches, a lot of trainers. I myself was a coach for almost a decade, and I'm always fascinated to ask other coaches this question, but how have you preserved your own desire to train yourself while you're just constantly immersing yourself in fitness generally? I think that's something that's very common amongst coaches, owners, whoever else is that if they're intimately involved in the space, is that all of a sudden, the lines between professional and personal get blurred a little bit, and all of a sudden the gym feels like the office, and you don't want to be there after you've already been there for 8 hours to train yourself at the end of the day, right? So how have you preserved your own desire to train yourself and continue to kind of, have your own practice amidst just constantly being inundated with fitness related material?
It's a great question. And I think if you were to go, okay, like, what's my one passion in life and a consistent thread throughout my life, it has been training. It's been something that's been like really important to me, just to, emotionally, physically, mentally. And I think in answer to your question, it's very hard. I actually found that, I suppose I was lucky in the early years of my coaching career in the sense that I would join like the athletes for some stuff, like say they were doing some longer conditioning or doing some weightlifting. I kind of dip in on one of the sessions, and so I'd still like get that exposure by doing that. And it was mainly because, when you're with the elite athletes, let's say, you're doing 6 hours a day training. So then you kind of give them a bit of a motivation to join in. As my fitness level deteriorated and the athletes got better, that happened less and less. And I would say that it was, I think for people out there who's fighting for that motivation, actually finding a new environment is also important. Having a space for you, because there's no way around it. Like if we're running a camp or something like that and you're in the gym 8 hours, you're tired, you've just been coaching people all day, it's hard then to go and throw down in that same environment, people asking you questions so you don't really get in your flow, all of those things. It's a kind of an irony, but I actually think finding a space for yourself outside of that environment can be really important. And this is why I've liked like golf, for example. It's not necessarily a physical activity, but as I found that, I go to a golf course now. I took it back up with some friends during COVID. And it's the nicest thing because no one asked me any golf-related coaching questions. No one's going to ask me, like, how do I get better at my swing? I'm like, yeah, it's the best thing ever because, you're just out there throwing down with friends and, it's be it a different environment. Or the same with running. And so it's actually been quite nice not being in, like, expert in the field because people don't constantly ask you the questions when you're training with them or doing those things.
I used to get a lot of weird looks when I was a trainer at a gym, but I also had a gym membership elsewhere. They're like, I don't get it. You work here. Why not just work out here? I was like, to your point, I need a new environment. I need to change the scenery. I need a place that feels like a retreat. So it's good to hear that I wasn't the only one to struggle with that. But sounds like you've done a great job of, just persevering there and just preserving that desire to have a need to train yourself and a want to train yourself. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's been a priority, like a personal priority of mine for the last few years. And my fitness went, when you're younger, you just maintain it in a different way. But, as I started getting older, I was like, it doesn't come back as easy. I'm not enjoying not training. And so actually I just made it a priority in my life. It became a bit of a non-negotiable, like, okay, I know that at least 4 times a week, I'm going to prioritize myself training because it's important to me. Maybe I get 5, maybe I get 6, but okay, 4 times a week, that's the non-negotiable for me, that I'll have 90 minutes to myself to train.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important. You're like just giving in to other people and like helping them increase their fitness day in, day out. And then you find your own like decreasing over time. It's like your bandwidth to like be in the gym decreases. But yeah, I used to coach CrossFit classes, 6 hours a day and then go home and train in the garage. Like, sometimes you just need that little bit of break. But I also love that you have found other hobbies that are still active. And like, I think fitness for a lot of gym owners starts as their hobby and their passion, and then it becomes work when they start a business with it. And so like finding external hobbies to still like fulfill you and give you goals to chase outside of the gym, probably really important to like, longevity in the space.
Yeah, I think this is true. Probably 99% of people who start coach because they're passionate about training. They've kind of come through that journey themselves. They love it. And I think there's a bit of a cliche, you follow your passion. But I don't always think it's the best idea for people. Like in some ways, like if you've got this passion and something you really love, well, keep that. It can be precious. You don't necessarily have to like drill it home. Some people who have a 9 to 5, and then actually you've still got this thing that, you don't have to turn it into your work and your 100% focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a lot about CrossFit and how you kind of started your coaching journey through CrossFit. How did you get into HYROX? What changed?
Um, so I think we were exposed to it because it came from Europe. So there's like a group in Germany that started the brand and the event. So we probably had a bit more early, like eyes on, seeing and hearing about it. And then like a few years ago, you just started hearing, okay, maybe someone's doing a HYROX race. I mean, imagine what's happening for a lot of people now. You're like, okay, it's HYROX. And then you hear it again. Oh, it's a HYROX race. And I think for most CrossFitters, it's just a long CrossFit workout. And that's like, okay, the long CrossFit workout. And then you're like, okay, all of a sudden you kind of give in, like, okay, I'm going to try one. You start looking at it more, and really it was a bit of a soft journey for me. It's been like two or so years since we've been involved in the space, and we became an official training program of HYROX. And we're also the first like CrossFit training program, known cross training program, to provide HYROX programming. And I think one of the things that I kind of really started to go, okay, well, actually, this is quite interesting, is for years, for the whole time I've been in CrossFit, we've prepared for the unknown and the unknowable. That's our jam. Okay, whatever, a random event, whatever's going to happen, you kind of have to be prepared. And you try to explain that to most coaches around the world. Like, okay, that seems a bit silly. But then HYROX comes along and you've got this known and knowable element. Mm-hmm. You've got some, you can kind of see it's the relevance to CrossFit. Okay, there's some stations that we know that are there. We just add in there's more running component to it. And that started to kind of spark my interest of like, how would you make someone better at HYROX? And actually, you've got this set goal, you know what you need to do, you know what you need to improve. And then that kind of interest and journey started from there.
Yeah.
John, I'm curious too. Like so a little background. I live in Austin, Texas, which apparently is the unofficial HYROX capital of the United States. It's everywhere out here. And I'm just now learning about it, obviously through my time here at Wodify, but also just in my personal life, because tons of people that I know out here are all experimenting with it, getting into it. I know there was a huge race in Dallas, I think it was last year. So a bunch of people from local gyms went up there to compete. So from sort of like someone who's pretty ignorant to this world and doesn't know a lot about HYROX, how would you sort of summarize the key differences between it and CrossFit? If you had to really boil it down to like is it more running? Is that really the main difference between the two? Is it there less focus on barbell movements? Like, what's the main sort of set of differences?
So I think that I can give you kind of like two answers. I would say, if we're to kind of pigeonhole it, you go from unknown and unknowable to known and knowable. And then a bit of a longer format of that. I think CrossFit make it really hard to define, because what is CrossFit? You go, okay, well, CrossFit's defined constantly varied functional movements, execute a high intensity across like broad times and modal domains. Like, you go, okay, great, first definition. But because really you look at it, any kind of training could then be CrossFit. You do a bit of, we have this idea, but it's not really defined in this pigeonholed way. And, basically HYROX is a long CrossFit workout. Like, it's a kind of workout that you could see at the games. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if Castro had programmed this workout at the games. And that's why I think there's a lot of similarities. I think that I think for a lot of people, a lot of CrossFitters, seeing it as a CrossFit workout is absolutely reasonable and understandable because we're so used to this format. And I think the biggest distinguishing factor is that the actual event never varies, that you're always preparing for this something that's the same. Now,
Can you tell us what the the HYROX PFT, right? That's the race. And
which is
give
the
us
PFT?
Give us a little more details, because we're talking about kind of HYROX as a concept, right? But what is the difference between like HYROX as a training style HYROX as like a competition, like how do those two vary? What actually is the competition? It's the same, right? Over and over again. And
Yeah,
then there's
so
also like the HYROX like fitness test as well.
yeah, so you have this the HYROX race. It's 8 stations, and each station is preceded by a 1K run. And the CrossFitters are familiar with a lot of the stations. You know, they've got a ski, they've got a row, they've got sled pull push, burpee broad jumps, wall balls, farmer's carry, lunges. And so that's like, okay, you know, we've seen all those movements in some kind of functional fitness or CrossFit way. And I think that's where the familiarity of it comes in. And then for runners, they're like, okay, well, they're obviously familiar with 8K of running, but then they also have this uncertainty because, you know, they've probably never been on a ski erg, they've never done wall balls. And so I think there's both sides of this. You know, you've got the CrossFitters and the runners that are kind of meeting somewhere in the middle in this HYROX world. I think the PFT, this HYROX test, I believe it's something that HYROX put out that people can do in their gym, but I'm not super familiar with that test itself, actually.
Okay, interesting. And then like as far as training, would you consider HYROX like a style of training? And then
Yeah.
what does that look like? It's all, I'm guessing, geared towards like improving at the elements found in the HYROX race. But what does that look like as a training style?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And I think there's an interesting debate online. You know, you can go, well, CrossFit's a methodology and HYROX is an event. I don't know if that like tells a lot necessarily, because I also feel there's like, you can have a methodology of training for HYROX. You know, your approach to HYROX training can include elements of the CrossFit methodology, in the sense you can constantly vary things. You may just kind of bias that constantly varied nature to a certain aspect, be that more endurance aspect than strength based. But I think right now it depends on where your background is. Like for a lot of runners, this is what's been interesting for me, diving more into, say, an endurance training world and seeing how runners train. I mean, you know, I suppose it makes a lot of sense, but runners just run, you know, so like a lot of runners just run. And so for them, any addition is like variance. Whereas for CrossFitters, we're like, you know, what do you mean we're not doing 15 or 20 exercises each class? Because they're just, even for like, if you ask CrossFitters to row for 20 minutes, oh, that's a bit boring. You know, there's like this change in mindset from the two extremes. So I think that how do people train for HYROX is also a very broad spectrum. You know, there's no real definition or answer. And this is one of the reasons why we kind of tried to solve that question a little bit, to bring in some aspects of, okay, you know, here's how you should train for a HYROX. Because a lot of people just go, well, it's just conditioning. And they start kind of providing these conditioning classes, but actually it misses the certain element that is nuanced towards this. And the one thing that we've found, the one thing I've been thinking about lately is a super old training principle, like the SAID principle, like specific adaptation to imposed demands. You know, it's like one of the oldest training principles they have. And I actually think it's just a really nice principle, because if you're doing things that are really far away from your end goal, then the transfer is probably less and less. And I think that a lot of people can take this towards HYROX, you know, go, okay, there's 8K of running. That's like a huge component of the HYROX. Therefore, I need to be doing something like running specific. You know, then you start to add in all these stations. And so, you know, your training should start to involve these stations. And the further you move away, like, you know, you're not going to need high level gymnastics, or you're not going to be able to clean a lot of weight. And I also think this is why it's become very popular, because that barrier to entry, then it's a lot more easier entry point into a HYROX than it is to a classic CrossFit. And I understand the concept of the, you know, CrossFit's infinitely scalable to people, but the end goal of the, CrossFit is, whatever, to be able to do all of these things. Well, that's what people aspire to. Whereas in HYROX, actually, you can do the same thing as the elite athletes, albeit at a lower intensity level.
John, do those stations change? So, like, will one race have a different set of stations that are wholesale different from another, or are they pretty consistent across the races?
100% consistent. And I actually think this is the beauty of it. And Christian, though, one of the founders, I have a lot of respect for that, because I think there must have been like moments where like, okay, maybe I should tweak this, maybe I should change that. But just actually having the confidence in keeping it exactly the same, I think has become one of the beauties of it. There are some, the nuances that you find are sometimes like, for example, if you do it in Dallas or you do it in London or the New York one that was done outside, the amount of loops that you have to run to accumulate your 1K. So 90% of the HYROX at the moment are done inside. And when they do them inside, you have to obviously run a few times around to accumulate enough distance. Some venues are bigger, and the less times you have to run, the quicker it is typically, because you don't have to decelerate for the turns and all these things. So there are some minute differences between venues, but it pretty much stays exactly the same.
To ask a little bit of a nerdy coaching question for you, but I imagine these are the ones you love to answer. What is your biggest challenge as a programmer for HYROX, because of the consistency of the stations and the idea of specificity? Is the biggest challenge just not essentially avoiding overuse injuries, right? Because like if we're preparing for these specific stations or we're doing these movements a lot, we have a ton of exposure to them. It's kind of your main challenge, like getting them exposure to the pattern, but yet not just constantly doing that single variation, which may lead to joint pain or injury or overuse or whatever the case may be. Is that really the main challenge of programming for this type of workout?
I think there's a few things. One, I think, is making it still enjoyable, especially to our classic demographic, which is CrossFitters. So actually they're finding this they're still getting some variants, but not like wasteful variants in there. And then to your point, Cory, like with running, 100%. Like probably the biggest thing that any CrossFitter needs to be aware of when they're starting HYROX training is not just going out and running loads more. Because as much as we're used to this constantly varied, and maybe we have a bit of running, we do not run consistently enough in order to be able to accumulate the kind of volume that one would use to train for a HYROX classically. And this is one of the big things that we manage, is that introduction of running and that progression of running, is using a very simple progressive overload or making sure the body's ready for it in order to do it. But yeah, and I would say that, if someone signed up for a HYROX here, don't just go out and run more. You need to obviously you need to improve the volume, but you need to do it in a very sensible way.
Got it. And John, kind of navigating away just for a moment from the programming and coaching side of things and talking a little bit more from a business's perspective. There's just so much fervor right now about HYROX. I mean, I'm subscribed to a quick tip for you guys. You should use Pocket. It's a little app where you can save articles to read later. But anyways, they have a newsletter and it aggregates basically all like the most clicked on articles on the internet that day. And the other day, wouldn't you know, it was from, I don't know, like Vanity Fair or something. It was like the most popular fitness trend in America right now, HYROX. And it was in the actual aggregated newsletter of like one of the most popular articles that day, or maybe it was the New York Times, whomever it was that published it. So it's out there. It's sort of getting to that more mainstream level that only really in this space, CrossFit really was there, getting to that sort of mainstream level. Now HYROX is sort of also appearing now at that level. How can a business owner best position themselves to take advantage of this trend, or to, just potentially add this as an additional offering for their gym? Is it something that you need to become affiliated with, such as CrossFit? Is it a little bit more open-ended? Can anyone offer these classes? How, as a business owner, can they get into this world?
going to pick it apart in a few details. You can, so they run an affiliate program in the same way as CrossFit. So in order for your gym to become a HYROX affiliate, you can sign up in the same way and become HYROX X Gym, etc. They have a few different tiers of membership, but off the top of my head, it is cheaper than CrossFit. I think it ends up costing like 1.5 thousand US dollars a year or something in that mark. So you can become an official HYROX affiliate. They also do education on this side of things, so that there is that option available to people. On the more like one of the important personal levels in terms of like gym owners, because we've been like micro gym owners, CrossFit gym owners, and it can be really hard, especially when the brand doesn't necessarily help you in terms of its reputation at times. It's sometimes not led to inspiring more and more people to go into a CrossFit gym. And this is one of the things that really struck me, is that CrossFit affiliates and CrossFit coaches are in a really unique position to add a lot of value to people wanting to do their HYROX. The reason being, one, basically there's no cost in starting this. Most gyms have all the equipment already. You got a skier, you got a row, you got a wall ball, you got farmers, whatever it may be. Okay, you have 90% of gyms have 90% of the equipment needed in order to do this. And the beauty of it is, and kind of mentioned this earlier, we often look at it a bit like a Venn diagram, that you've got CrossFit on this side, in the middle you have HYROX, on the other side you have this ginormous market relative to CrossFit that are runners. And so all of a sudden you've got a huge demographic of fitness people who would have probably never walked foot into CrossFit gym, but all of a sudden they might now be interested because you offer what they need in order to prepare for this HYROX event. So this is the one thing that I've really tried to, I appreciate. I mean, I don't have any direct affiliation to HYROX, apart from the fact that we kind of provide an official training program. But I think it's a really unique opportunity for CrossFit gyms and micro gyms to get new members and get new prospects and actually enter into a new world that they might not have been able to enter into, already been harder to enter into than it is now. It seems like a no-brainer to me right now that a large number of CrossFit gyms should be starting to enter into this world, especially if they're struggling to increase revenue.
Got it. So just to summarize, if there's a CrossFit gym out there who's interested in this, they would need to affiliate in order to offer official HYROX classes and call those classes HYROX. So that is a question I get, because I deal a lot with new customers coming onto our platform, and HYROX comes up sometimes and they're like, I'd like to offer that, but how does it work? Do I need to affiliate? Do I need to, can I offer a class that's called HYROX if I'm not affiliated? So that's super good to know. They already have the equipment. So from a investment perspective, it's really a fairly low barrier to entry there. That's a great point that I hadn't thought about. So I guess that leads into a question I have. If I forced you to, what would be a really great way to start offering this at a gym? Is it like a once a week class, maybe on a Saturday? Is it peppering in a few throughout the week? What would be really a effective way to start introducing this to the class calendar?
Yes, so to give some examples, one of the reasons, again, this is a few years ago, but we had gyms who were starting to introduce, like, classically Thursday can be like an active recovery day for a lot of gyms, or a conditioning day. And what we would see is that the attendance on those days would be really low. That no one will go in, that everyone will just take it as a rest day. This then switched to becoming a HYROX, not conditioning, a HYROX day. And the class attendance just boomed because people all of a sudden like had this, I think, a bit more purpose to the conditioning or that style of training. And then, it started to snowball that, okay, you start adding up, maybe just have Thursday, then you start adding like 3 times a week, then 5 times a week. And I actually know gyms, which, it's an unfortunate position for CrossFit, but have fully gone in on the HYROX thing now and actually are moving more and more down that route because of the demand from the members. But I think, there's a classic stage of building with this. You need to gauge interest if your style of gym likes HYROX. There's, some gyms may be more inclined for that strength bias, for the bodybuilding's obviously a humongous world that probably is not going to transfer as well to the HYROX world. So I think that it's really important for gym owners to gauge interest from their members. Just, be that verbally, be that sending out a questionnaire, but, would you be interested in attending a HYROX class? And I think that already buys, am I going to start it, yes or no, would probably actually depend on the results that come back from that information. I would get some objective information, say you've got 100 members, you send it out, 50 reply, and only 5 people say, yes, we'd be interested, then maybe it's not the right time to start directly a class. The one thing I would say, and this has worked really well, is actually starting to advertise and promote a HYROX simulation. And this is a Saturday event, for example, where you might do some kind of format where you do a half HYROX or a team HYROX. And the great thing about this is, if you can approach your local run clubs, people who may be interested, and gather that community to your gym, I think that can act as a great springboard for you to start launching and just being able to connect with people who you wouldn't have been able to connect with before.
I actually think that's so interesting. My CrossFit gym back home actually always goes head to head with the run club in town at the local 5K with signups. And they're 2 separate groups, right? It's like a clear division of these people who are runners and then the CrossFit group. And what a great way to potentially bring in that running community. And I think also for non-CrossFit gyms that are offering functional training, maybe more of a boot camp style, this could be a really valuable offering to have training purpose, right? We're not just showing up to class, but we're training for a purpose. We know what the test is, and it makes it really, I think, actionable.
And it's, it works. A lot of runners are really interested in HYROX for obvious reasons. That the big thing about the sports that we're in, CrossFit, running, HYROX, they're participatory sports. And a lot of CrossFit athletes, CrossFit members, loads of them like to compete. And when I say compete, that might be the open, it's not like you're going to the games, but maybe you want to go down for a Saturday and throw down with your friends in a team or use your fitness for something. And that's the same with HYROX. That's the same with running. I mean, the amount of millions of people who sign up for a race any given weekend is huge. And the growth of the HYROX races is phenomenal. I mean, this calendar year, they're expecting 650,000 people to race in a HYROX. And it's just understanding how you get to that kind of volume. At certain weekends, they'll have over 30,000 people going through HYROX events. There's an event happening in Glasgow, which is starting on the Wednesday because they got to fit everyone through. So that means it's not just going for the weekend. They're going Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in order to accommodate the amount of people who want to go down and throw down in this HYROX event. And I would say, one sad thing I think to watch is that from a different perspective, it's kind of highlighted the potential that CrossFit had in some ways, that it hasn't capitalized on these things, because you see, HYROX has showed that there is this huge demand for it. It was just never kind of capitalized or or utilized as it could have been in the CrossFit world. I mean, open signups, for example, okay, there's 300,000 or whatever it may be, it goes down this year. But that's like half the number that are attending these live events. You know, that number starts to look relatively small compared to the HYROX world.
John, if I forced you to peer into your crystal ball and come up with a future prediction, do you think 5-10 years from now that it's very likely that CrossFit and HYROX will exist in tandem at a lot of gyms? Like, do you think that's where we're headed, where there's going to be a CrossFit gym that's sort of like a hybrid? Like, it offers CrossFit or HYROX, maybe if you're a little bit more into Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics, you might gravitate a bit more towards their CrossFit programming. Whereas if you're more of a runner and more endurance focused, naturally gravitate a little bit more towards the HYROX programming. Is that where you think we're headed?
I actually think we're already there. And I think that this is why it's very important for the micro gyms to really develop and focus on their strengths in the community. And I'm sure people have seen this around the world, that the Globo gyms now, they offer up so many options at a really like you know, in some cases just ridiculously low prices, because they just play that volume game. And the facilities that they have, because of the revenue they generate, is just becoming better and better, because fitness is still booming. Like, especially around Gen Z. I saw some statistics today on alcohol consumption, alcohol purchases. And like, relative to millennials and boomers and all these things, the alcohol consumption of Gen Z is like minuscule relative to millennials. And I think it's just that there's a big fitness trend in the next generation. They want to be healthy. They want to look after themselves. They want to participate in fitness. And I actually think what fitness is then defined to them as is being able to do lots of different sports. They might want to jump into a HYROX. They might want to lift. They might want to do a bit of bodybuilding. They might want to play like soccer with their friends on the weekends. They might want to jump in a 5K. But I actually think that this, like, being defined in one niche is going to disappear a bit more and more. So yeah, I think that these multiple offerings within your gym become important in order to attract that.
That's really interesting. That's a great point. Yeah, it does kind of hybrid athlete is a term that gets thrown out a lot nowadays. That's like really like kind of like the buzzy term, and it seems like HYROX is in many ways sort of just the manifestation of that.
Yeah, no one wanted to be like the skinny runner, you know? So I think that the hybrid allows you to kind of pack some muscle mass, not be super bulky, but be able to run, be able to be fit. And I think, to me, like, the CrossFit athlete really is the ultimate athlete. Like, what those guys can do, like the amounts of weight they can lift. I mean, Ricky Garrard put up kind of one of those challenges that he wants to be able to do like 180 kilo clean and a sub 18 minute 5K. I mean, like, that's just crazy what these CrossFit athletes are able to achieve in such a broad spectrum of fitness. But I think as we move into more the general population, you know, they want to be fit and healthy, they want to look good, and they want to enjoy what they're doing, and they probably enjoy a bit more variance than just one specific niche.
So you're saying I'm a dying breed, John. My exclusively bodybuilding, meathead focused training regime is going out of style.
Well, luckily the bodybuilding niche is a big niche, so you're still okay for a while.
For a little bit. I got a little bit of time left. Very good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, Regan, you go ahead.
Yeah. So John, let's give you a chance to highlight the program. Obviously, we just talked about how, you know, micro gyms, CrossFit, functional training facilities could step into offering this as a class. And I think jumping into offering a new program is a big feat. And you guys help solve a major element of that feat, which is the daily programming. So tell us a little bit more about what the program offers for, and I know you guys offer CrossFit programming as well, but so CrossFit programming, and then if people are interested in HYROX style training.
So we've been programming for well over a decade, and programming for affiliates, for athletes, and specifically for our affiliate programming. One of the biggest goals of that was to be able to save the gym owner time. We knew how stressful it can be, and so it's like, okay, how can we offload that in a big way? And programming was the ability to do that. And I think it's just really useful as a gym owner to be able to go, okay, here's my week's programming. It's something that I can take off my plate. I know that I'm going to be getting a good product. I can then send that out to my coaches. We add in coaches' notes, we add in timetables. We really try to take as much of the thought process away from the gym owner. And we've transferred that across into our HYROX programming as well. So that's what we're offering for CrossFit programming, for HYROX programming. It's exactly the same thing. And I argue it's maybe even more important because it's into a new world. And I think a lot of mistakes or traps people fall into is just kind of going through like similar workouts again and again. But I still think there's a variance that's important for CrossFit gyms, and it's finding that right level of variance, and that's kind of where we have the experience in doing it. And I would also say that our focus on micro gyms and understanding, okay, you might not have all this equipment, your members might not be able to do this, your run route might be a bit funny. That's like where our specialty has come in, just over the years of kind of modifying and working around lots of different gyms and their requirements. Some of the HYROX programming that's coming out now is really based on like big Globo gyms, who just happen to have like 20 machines and all these different things. It's a lot easier to program around. And this kind of more nuanced program for micro gyms is where we specialize.
I love that. Yes, most micro gyms don't have 20 ski ergs in their facility to run a full, ski. They might have 2. And that can be a big challenge for people. They've got to optimize the space they have and balance that with the amount of equipment. So I know that's a huge value add for programming to be done with that in mind.
Well, John, we're coming up on our time here, but we really appreciate you joining us here today. I imagine with the rapid growth of this trend, it won't be the last time we talk to you about this, but I think this is an awesome introduction for the people listening, and we thank you for being willing to offer it to us. So for folks who listen to this and are interested in learning more about the program, are interested in learning more about the different tracks you offer that include HYROX style programming, how do you like to be communicated with? How should they reach out? Instagram, your website? What's the best way to kind of take next steps in just learning more about the program?
Yeah, I mean, any search with the program without an A, which is a story for another time. But you can just search for us and we'll come up. And I'm not sure if we can include like links for you guys, because we're on the Wodify marketplace, so we'll be able to send out like a direct link for you guys to be able to check out our program on Wodify as well. And then feel free, like our contact on Instagram, we have you'll be able to get directly in touch with us there. So that's a good place to start.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. We'll definitely share those links in the video description. And we really enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about you, John, and also the program. Thank you so much for jumping on with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me chat for now.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you, John. Take care, man. Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye.